Hello and welcome to Newscentre. I'm Parikshit Luthra. US President Donald Trump says it is unfair to expect Tesla and Elon Musk to build a factory in India to avoid tariffs. He also reiterated the threat of reciprocal tariffs. US broadcaster Fox News conducted a joint interview of Donald Trump and close aide and Tesla CEO Elon Musk. Trump said he told the Prime Minister that US will charge whatever India charges. Trump claimed that India charges the highest tariffs in the world and the import duty is 100% for cars. Trump said, and I quote him, "It's impossible to sell a car practically in India." End of quote. Sources, meanwhile, tell CNBC-TV18 that Tesla is planning to start sales in India from April and has already zeroed in on two locations, one in Delhi's AeroCity and the other in Mumbai's BKC. Tesla, however, is yet to commit to Make in India. It is likely to source components worth $1 billion in 2025, a number that could significantly increase in the coming years. Donald Trump remains firm on reciprocal tariffs. He expects America's 25% tariffs on automobile, pharma and semiconductor imports will begin in April. Remember, United States is India's biggest pharma market. It accounted for 31% of India's pharma exports last fiscal. Joining me right now are former Commerce Secretary Anup Wadhawan and Jayant Dasgupta, former Indian ambassador to the WTO. Let me go across to Mr. Wadhawan first. Mr. Wadhawan, what's your sense? Do you think India, which has now begun interministerial consultations on that bilateral trade agreement with the US, do you think there will be some very significant concessions that we will have to give the United States? And which could be some of those early areas where we could have to make those concessions?
Yeah, thank you, Parikshit. So you see the trade agreement, in a sense, takes off from where things ended in President Trump's last term. We were discussing various trade issues. They had, access issues on various tariff lines, and we had similar, ambitions from them and other concerns, including visas and totalization of social security contributions. So in a sense, that process was interrupted. So this takes off from there to certainly some concessions will be extended. But, by definition, almost a trade agreement is balanced and reciprocal, to use a term used by President Trump. So certainly we'll be giving some concessions, but in return, we'll have our own, wants and ambitions, and those will get fulfilled too. The concern is that this ominous sort of reciprocal tariff issue is spoiling the turf, so to say. And I think our sort of position on that should be that if this reciprocal tariff issue has to be addressed, and it has to be addressed outside a trade agreement, then whatever concessions we give in return for whatever concessions we get from them have to be on an MFN basis, and American companies need not necessarily benefit. So I think the US should not go down this reciprocal tariff route, and since we've agreed to have a negotiation for a kind of trade agreement, that is the route to follow, and then all those concessions will be on a bilateral basis, and American companies will benefit. So those are my thoughts.
All right, let me go across to Jayant Dasgupta now. Jayant Dasgupta, on the issue of automobile tariffs. Today, Donald Trump has gone on to say that he would like to impose 25% tariffs in the auto sector, in the pharmaceutical sector as well. How do you think this will impact the Indian industry, especially the pharmaceutical sector? 38% of our exports from the pharmaceutical manufacturing go to the US.
Well, the pharmaceutical exports will suffer if tariff of 25% is levied on Indian imports. But the point is that the US is a net importer of pharmaceutical products, and it also imports a lot of active pharmaceutical ingredients, APIs, from China. So I don't see how this 25% tariffs will enable the American pharma industry manufacturing in the US to fill up the gap in the between the import requirements and their own domestic production. So this 25% reciprocal tariff, which President Trump has been talking about, is going to apparently is going to be imposed on all countries. So that then will be a kind of a level playing field for India and other pharmaceutical exporters to the US. So I think the impact would be there, but it would not be enormous. As far as automotives are concerned, India is not a major automotive exporter to the US. And the US also does not export much by way of automobiles to India. So I don't think that is really going to matter very much. As far as the previous conversation that you were having about Tesla is concerned, Tesla has been trying to enter India on this completely knockdown or semi-knockdown condition and assemble cars in India. And the Indian government very legitimately had said that we can give you concessions, but you will have to give a roadmap of manufacturing in India, a substantial part.
Yeah.
And that is what Elon Musk has been shying away from.
Right. Mr. Wadhawan, coming back to you, now when it comes to Tesla, they have had an on and off relationship, conversation with the Indian government over tariffs, over an India entry. This is not the first time that they've started hiring for the India market. Do you think it makes sense for them to just import cars and sell in India right now rather than manufacturing, considering their global EV sales have declined by 1%? There is a massive drop in sales for them in countries like Germany and France. Then you've got Donald Trump. In fact, he just told Fox News that Tesla can go ahead and manufacture in India, but that would be very unfair to America. Looking at all the circumstances, do you think for the moment Musk would only want to sell in India?
It's quite clear that Musk is keen to enter India and enter within the framework that he has now. And that framework is that if it's a car that is fully assembled, then it comes in at 110% duty or 70% duty. Semi-knockdown, it is 35%. Fully knockdown, it's 15%, I think. So that is one window through which he comes in. But my suspicion is that he wants to go whole hog and end up eventually manufacturing. So he comes in that $500 million investment in 3-year window, which allows him to import 8,000 cars per year fully assembled at 15% duty. And eventually in 5 years, he has to, of course, do 50% value addition on that. And there is some talk of, Tesla having plans to invest $30 billion, including $15 billion in, battery manufacturing, $3 billion in developing a small car or a cheaper version valued at around $25,000. So my suspicion is that he might come in right now in the window, based on semi-knockdown, fully knockdown assembly operations. But then that itself, will take time to set up. And in the meanwhile, to the extent he has to import fully built up cars, then that 15% window with, $500 million investment is open to him. So my suspicion is that given by what, the grapevine is, he seems to be keen to enter in that window, actually invest and start manufacturing. And the fact that he's, advertised these positions means he is going ahead and he's obviously okay with whatever is the policy framework at this time. Notwithstanding what President Trump is saying, I don't think we can take that very seriously, because he would, of course, like all manufacturing to happen in the US. But at another level, Musk cannot ignore the Indian market, and to the extent he's going forward now, he's obviously got some comfort with the framework that exists today by way of policy and regulations in India.
All right. Mr. Dasgupta, do you think India should make those concessions right now for Elon Musk, reduce tariffs on fully built cars up to $40,000 US, below 70%? Right now, the 70% duty structure exists. Do you think India has room to slash tariffs even further?
Well, it all goes back to a case which was there in the WTO in 1996 on automotives against India. And India had, made a precondition that, it would allow imports, of course, with high duties, but the manufacturing base had to be set up in India, and that continued. Of course, we lost the case, but the fallout of the case was a positive fallout that we maintained the tariffs and the condition for quite some time, and that enabled many foreign auto manufacturers to come and set up base in India. It uh, also compelled, in a sense, because of the large growing Indian market. This is again the situation now, because we are moving towards electric vehicles in a very big way. And Elon Musk has technology, he is the leading electric car manufacturer in the world. If he sets up base here, it will help the Indian automotive industry also. But the point is that we can't have freeloaders or freebies given right, left, and center, especially to the largest electric car manufacturer in the world. So he has to make a commitment that he will start production maybe 3 years down the road, or whatever program he has. He can't just keep on importing and selling cars in India at a lower import tariff.
Right. Let me go back to Mr. Wadhawan at this stage. Mr. Wadhawan, when it comes to automobile tariffs, we've got very small number of cars which are actually exported to US every year. Do you think it will actually hurt India to reduce tariffs, or the problem is that if we give concessions to America, other countries will also seek the same concessions?
Yeah, so certainly, unless we do it as part of the trade agreement with the US, and we then do it on an MFN basis, so all countries benefit. So as far as, duties on autos are concerned, the automobile sector has been protected now for several decades, since, these companies invested. The foreign companies came in and invested a few decades back. And since then, they've had a lot of protection. So at one level, it is not good for us also to indefinitely protect an industry which we claim is a success story. Autos and auto components are a success story. But at some point, they must face up to competition. Otherwise, again, you see, it will affect their competitiveness. It will affect their productivity. Even now, you see, if you talk to experts in the field, they will say that our automobile manufacturing is 10 to 15 years behind the developed countries in terms of the models, in terms of the technology. So protection has to have some phase out. You can't indefinitely protect, because it will undermine, competitiveness, undermine innovation, undermine quality. So certainly, I think there is room for bringing our duties down in a phased manner on an MFN basis for our own good. So the indefinite protection is not going to be, good in the long run.
Right. So indefinite protection is not good in the long run, and that's what several government officials have said in the past as well. Ambassador Dasgupta, one final question to you would be about the threat of reciprocal tariffs. Trump has said that these reciprocal tariffs will come into effect from the 2nd of April. Currently, the US federal agencies are carrying out a study, and then reciprocal tariffs country-wise could come into effect. Which sectors in India do you expect to be the worst impacted, and where do you think we should have an urgency to have some sort of trade agreement with the US?
Well, there are two parts of the question. The first one is about the sectors which will affect reciprocal tariffs, will affect India the worst. India exports textiles, machinery, gems and jewelry, petroleum products. Now, if reciprocal tariffs are imposed, textiles is one area where we will perhaps suffer. Uh, in terms of the other products, gems and jewelry, for instance, I don't think it will really matter very much because the kind of market penetration that we have, and we also import a lot of diamonds and precious and semi-precious stones from the US, which we convert into jewelry and we sell it back to them, and as well as polished diamonds. So I think it is going to hurt the US also equally in terms of employment and in terms of business. So textiles is one area. Machinery, which is basically engineering goods exports, that is likely to get affected. But again, China and Korea, Japan, Taiwan, the Europeans, they are competitors for us. So if they are also slapped with the same tariffs, I don't think it's again going to matter very much.
All right. Thank you very much, Ambassador Dasgupta and Mr. Wadhawan, for joining us on that very important story. Let's see which way these trade negotiations go. And very soon, the US Secretary for Commerce and the Indian Commerce Minister will sit down for trade talks as well. And hopefully, these trade talks will be concluded by fall when Donald Trump will visit India. On that note, we take a short break here on Newscentre. When we return, we will speak about bourbon whiskey tariffs. We saw the Indian government slashing tariffs on bourbon whiskey imported from the United States. And we spoke to the Distillers Council for America, and they told us that they are hoping for a zero tariff regime. That interview coming up on the other side.